dynamic and static listener registration for standalone instance called client wanted to connect to my database server or database instance. What we have to say, the client is other word is an application trying to connect to my database server. There is a client or there is the applications coming from the web browser or coming from the TCP database connections over the protocol TCP or over the protocol with the HTTP. They are trying to connect to my listener. Hey guys, this is Ambasa here from Alok Institute. Today we will discuss about dynamic and static listener registration for standalone instance. So now there are many more cases where you may have asked the question about what is the difference between dynamic versus static listener registration. So we will go ahead and understand today in our today's agenda to make sure that this all you can easily answer in your given question. Let's see one by one what exactly dynamic listener registration followed by what is my static listener registration. Inside my static registration, we call static listener registration for your standalone instance. There are two methods. The method number one, we call it as a prepare the connect identifier in my TNS names.aura and followed by setting the parameters. That parameter name called local listener. A common confusion, it is not a listener name, it is a connect identifier or connection details to contact to my listener. Method 2, we will understand about how to add directly in my listener.aura file about my instance or database details into my listener.aura file so that the listener can directly know the things about your instance. An example, let's go ahead and understand here from the diagram point of view. Say the application called client wanted to connect to my database server or database instance. What we have to say, the client is other word is an application trying to connect to my database server. Before that, he has to contact to the process called a listener. Listener is one of the foreground process. So this listener will later connects to my database instance. So the instance wants to speak to my listener, a listener wants to speak to my instance. They both should know to each other. To make sure that to make them bind together, we want to have a registration between them. Now here the question expected, the listener will communicate to my instance only when instance, on behalf of instance, the process name called LREG stand for listener registration is one of the background process. The one of the background process LREG has to update the information about the instance to my listener so that the incoming connection asking for connecting to my database server through this listener, so he can redirect the connections to my instance. So hence you should know whenever there is a client or there is the applications coming from the web browser or coming from the TCP database connections over the protocol TCP or over the protocol with the HTTP, they are trying to connect to my listener and the listener will contact to my database server and then the communication gets started or the connection gets established. You may say that the same story here as well. I do SQL plus, an example. The SQL plus will contact to my listener. On behalf of SQL plus, there is a process called user process. The user process will contact to my listener. Listener will contact to my behalf of instance to server process. In short, the listener will first connect to my instance and then to the server process, and then the communication directly get established. to know the instance details to my listener, the process called here LREG. Prior to 12C, the process name called PMON, process monitor. From 12C, the process name called LREG. So the process, one of the background process, either PMON prior to 12C or LREG from 12C. The background process job is to update its informations to my listener. Then only the listener can redirect the connections to my instance. So now, why it is called dynamic and why it is called static? There are two registrations. So you have to tell why should I say it's a dynamic and why should I say it's a static. So if your listener is listening on the port number 1521, that time the registration is called dynamic. So here the process itself will do it for you, no need to do extra any configuration. Hence it is called dynamic listener registration. So the dynamic registration, or sometimes called dynamic listener registration, will be happening only when your listener is listening on the port number 1521. The port value can be between 1 to 65,535. Out of that, Oracle is taken default port number 1521. Now what we are looking for, if the listener is configured through the port number or has been configured with the port number 1521, then this registration will automatically takes place. We no need to do any extra configuration. Hence that is called dynamic listener registration. Whereas the other one, static listener registration, that is required only when your instance want to give the informations to my listener, but he cannot do it because of the listener is not listening on the default port, and that is there is a gap. So that gap has to be fulfilled by two way or by two method. Method 1 says, this is the two methods. Method 1 says you will use some connection string, and that connection string you update to your parameter. So then the instance, on behalf of instance, the LREG stands for listener registration process, the background process will give the informations to my listener. That's one method. The other method is we will add it manually, the entry about my global DB name, my software path, my instance name details into my file called listener.ro file. If you add it manually, then that is also called one of the method for static listener registration, so that the incoming connection will be redirected by the listener to my instance. Let's do it with practical part for the same. Here we go. Let's start with connecting to my server. This is one of my machine which I connected, and here I will go ahead and complete one by one the steps. You can just refer it, what are the steps you have to follow. We'll start with my first. I will start my instance and we'll see. Here we go. Dot space or env cdb1. This is my instance name. My instance name is cdb1 here, and that's what I noted from this particular file. The file name is called etc or attack. You can now see here the file name etc or attack, and that file will have the instance details, and this is what I have taken. Now set the environment variable by using dot space or env, and provide the value what has been mentioned here, cdb1. Okay, so once it is set, now let's start my SQL plus /s sysdb8 and say startup. What we are performing now, a database instance startup. So here we are right now started my database instance. Whenever you get started the database instance, it will read the parameter file and allocate memory structure and start the background process and opens the control file called database mounted, opens your remaining files like data file, redo log file called database open. Now once it is opened, you just have to verify how many containers I have or PDBs I have. Let's go and check. These are my few containers. We call it container database or sometimes called pluggable database. Now I wanted to connect to this container database. Let's see how do I connect it. From here I'll say exit. I'll try to do SQL plus. Username, I have a username called system. Password, you have to give it runtime. It's a better to not to write it in the terminal, but just for a demonstration I am just placing it here, Oracle for you @ the IP address of my machine, and here you can just check if config. This is my IP address. You can scroll up. This is my IP address. I'll just copy that IP address and I'll try to type here SQL plus and then username and password followed by @ the IP address, and trying to connect. The default port is 1521 and slash with the CDB1 and PDB1. Now you try to connect and it says that no listener. That means my listener is not yet started. Let's go ahead and start the listener. So what I will do, I'll just try to go ahead and type the command lsnrctl, stand for listener control utility, followed by start and hit enter. You don't need to give the listener name. It is considered by default as a listener name is called listener itself. Hit enter, and if you type here lsnrctl, listener control utility, followed by start, and the start will tell you that you wanted to start my listener, and scroll down, you will see here the alias, sometimes called name of the listener is called listener, and it's the status it is showing here. It is now started in so and so timing. It's the date and time it is shown to you, followed by you can now see here as of now nothing is shown to you whom to give the service. In other words, what it says, it has to redirect the connections to my instance. So the listener has to redirect the connections to my database instance, but that database instance has to be updated to my listener that we are so and so container or pluggable database, sometime called service. Let's see a few minutes later whether this gets updated or not by using the command status. Here you go, I type status. Now you can see automatically this all gets updated. I did not done any changes. It is automatically gets updated. So because of the port number is 1521. I did not done. So who does this part? It is again updated by the process called LREG from 12C onwards. The process name called listener registration. Now here you can just check PSF&EF by grep and LREG. So this is my one of the background process name called LREG, and here my instance name is CDB1, and that is my instance name. Now it is automatically on behalf of instance, the process background process name called LREG is updated to my listener that these are my services, nothing but these are my services, and if someone asks this service name, other word my PDB name, please contact or redirect the connections to this respective PDB. In example, you can now try connecting. Earlier you got the error, now you are able to connect. The previous error you can see here, no listener. Can you able to see? This is the one which I just mentioned in a previous example. It's no listener because listener did not started. That is the reason you received an error saying that no listener. But now it gets started and automatically gets registered. I don't need to do anything. Everything is fine. Now consider I wanted to now use non-default listener port number. So that is a non-default port number, that is a 15 other than 1521 port number. We will go ahead and refer it and we will see how will be the case where without using that 1521 port number, will it automatically does the registration. Let's see that. Before that, I will just check, do we have any parameter with this name? Local listener, yes, we do have a parameter name with a local listener. but there is no value as such has been set. So it is nothing but it's a null value. So right now we did not configure any external or any specific value for this particular parameter. Now go ahead and exit from here. Try to stop my listener. Now you can verify LSNR, PSFNEF, pipe grep, LSNR or TNS. So you can use one of them because the utility name or the executable name is called TNS LSNR, Transport Network Substrate Listener. That's the short form. Now here I will try to go for stop, LSNR CTL stop, enter. So I just stopped. Now that's fine. We will go ahead and now open the or retry the check the LSNR or the TNS, or we can try again with the connectivity. Obviously you get a no listener error. That's okay. Let's now proceed with the configuring my listener entry. So where this configuration has to be done, in the file name called vi oracle home network and admin tns names.org. So you have to open this listener.org. So here what you have to do, vi $oracle home and network admin / listener.org. So once you open that file, so I just mentioned here listener name called listener 11, and you may take any new listener also. That's not supposed to use the same one. Let's do it one more time in front of you, how to prepare the listener. Example, let's try to do it here. Listener name would be listener, let's say 21. You can give anything, so any name, followed by the description equal to and address. This is my address of the listener. Here I will put my host 192.168.56.11. This is my listener name, and inside the listener we are mentioning the listener address details. We will start with the description followed by address. In the address there are three values. One is called host or IP address or the port, the host name, followed by port, and this port what I just referred, default is 1521. What we are actually looking for here, we don't want 1521. To understand, if I don't use 1521, what would be the case? Let's say if I don't give 1521, rather than I will make it 1501, followed by protocol here TCP, and the address bracket you have to close it, description bracket you have to close it. So what we mentioned, we started with listener name. Listener name can be any name. I given here listener 21. Default listener name is listener. Inside the listener, after the listener name, you have to use the equal operator followed by a description. In the description, you have to mention the address. In the address, you have to mention three values: host, port, and the protocol. The port range, as I mentioned, 1 to 65,535. So from 1, you can put any number between 1 to 65,535. Now we have selected one of the port called 1501. Commonly asked question: can I configure multiple port for a single listener? Yes, it's possible. The other question would be, can I use the same port for two listeners? No, you cannot, because it's a port is like a memory address. Two processes cannot use the same memory address. So hence it is mandatory to mention different port number for two different listeners. If I used here 1511, I should use other than 1511. So if I use the same, it will not allow. It says that it is already in use. So hence I am just mentioned here 1501. Now in this example, we are just mentioned listener name and listener address details. We haven't mentioned anything about our instance details. So will it my instance on behalf of instance LREG, will it automatically update to my listener about its details? No, because of it is not using 1521. Let's see that. Let's save it, followed by LSNR. Let's check here. This is the file. I'm just checking what I just added. Okay, so this is what I just added. Let's now take further extra line. Here, this is what I have just added. This is my listener name and this is my listener address followed by its respective value inside the address. Now let's start the listener. lsnrctl start listener 21. So now you have to type listener control utility start is a command and this is my listener name, what is mentioned here. Hit enter, it says that now started. Now once after started, it says that no services, and you can even just check, wait for a while. Let's check whether it is started or not. It is started, but still you cannot see any services. That means if I try to connect my container by using the proper port number. Now here what I mentioned, I used the port number is 1501. Let's now put it here 1501. What it is? This is the error what you expect. This means here listener is not aware whom to redirect the connections. That is because listener does not currently know of service defined in current descriptor. You can say here service requested in current descriptor, whatever you mentioned to want to connect. This is because requested in current descriptor. So this connection is called current descriptor. So from @ till this is called current descriptor. And the service requested is nothing but this is the service. Listener don't know because you are contacting to the address of the listener. So this is my IP address and this is my port number. So what it says, this is my IP address and this is my port number. So that is what you have to mention while connecting, and you get the error because of it is not registered. So now why it is not registered? Because of the port number is listener is not using the default port. If the listener is not using a default port, then what we have to do it? We have to go for static registration. Now how do I do it? Let's now understand one by one. There are two methods which I mentioned here. You can go ahead and refer it. In the static registration, we call static listener registration. We do have a method 1. First we will understand method 1, then we will go with method 2. In the method 1, I will tell in my tnstream.aura, I will give you a listener detail. So what we will do, we will give you listener details. Where you will be giving? In my tnstream.aura. And that connection string, I'll use it in my parameter. Let's do it. Here we go. Scroll up, first check, this is my listener details. Let's copy this. Whatever it is says that this is my listener details. Copy that and add that file, that information in. This is the file. In the file called tnstream.aura. What I'm doing, I'm now trying to help you out how to configure static registration, and in that method 1. So first of all, I will open the file name called tnstream.aura. Inside this file, we will add one entry. Let's go for in the top section. An example, I'll just put it here, ABC. You can give anything equal to this value. This is just a connect identifier. So you can put anything here. I given here ABC followed by my listener details, listener address details, started with a description followed by address and so on and so forth. Once it is done, save this file. So you have to do escape : WQ, and that's what it is referred. After this is saved, let's go for head, and this is the first line. Let's take this is the line which I added in this file. So what is my name of the connect identifier? ABC. This can be anything. So that connect identifier, you have to add it in your parameter. Let's log into my instance. Before login, I can reconfirm still, is there any registration happened? Registration is nothing but you should see the services details. Whom to redirect? The listener has to redirect to my service. That is nothing but my instance to service. Now here, the instance is not updated about the services details to my listener. So hence what it says, I don't know because you are using a non-default port number. Hence, instance on behalf of instance LREG, he cannot directly update that information because you are not listing default. Let's log into my SQL Plus. This is what we have taken, SQL Plus / SSDBA, and then show parameter local listener, followed by you type alter system set and you put this parameter name equal to the value. Then the moment you do this parameter setting, now exit from here and recheck once again status option. Now you will see this list of services. Now if I show one more time, you re-log in, go ahead and check, is it set? Yes, it's set. Now let's remove it. What happens if I remove it? Don't do it. Let's say if I remove it and this is what I said, remove it, go ahead and check, not there, exit, recheck here. It says back to null. And commonly people do this point like alter system register. This is manually, you try with register, doesn't make any sense because it is not maintain that value. You even though do register, what I said, if you try with alter system register, you are asking to register if it is the default port number. Is it a default port number? No, absolutely not. So listener is not using default port number. Right now my listener is using not 1521. That is not a default. Hence it is it is not using a 1521. So it is called non-default port number. So if it is non-default port number, this writing this command is doesn't make sense. It's useless. So you have to remember what is my action point. I have to make sure that I need to add this parameter about what you mentioned in my connection string. Example, let's say here what we did, we added this connection details to my listener. I will add this value to my parameter. Here's an example. I'll just add it now. First check, nothing is added. Let me add it again. Here we go, add it. And you don't need to type alter system register. Once you do this, exit, recheck. Now it is things working. Yes, now try to connect. See here. Yeah, here we go. You can able to connect. This is so simple if you understand properly about how the registration works. That is because how the static registration works. Then now that is the method 1. Let's understand about method 2. So let's remove this one more time. We'll go for your null value, save it and exit. Now try to reconnect after null value. You can see that this is the commonly again face the problem. There is a listener is not aware about requested service defined in current descriptor. Okay, so this is we call commonly faced error. Now the next method which I said, this is a static registration method 2. In the method 2, we will add it manually the system identifier description details. We call SID description details. Where I have to add it now? Now I have to add it in my listener.aura file. Let's do it. Here we go. Before going with that, the value to be added. Now I wanted to connect to this particular pluggable database or container or service. So that I wanted to mention it. But for that, first of all need to check what is my instance name here. What is my software path? And finally, which service you wanted to connect. Let's do it. Here we go. Via the file. So I have collected the instance name. I have collected my service details. Let's say here, this is my service details, whom to connect, followed by what is my software path. These three which I have collected, let me just add it in my file called Oracle Home Network Admin and listener. Once you open that file, and as we mentioned here, listener name listener 21, we will just add it here, SID underscore list underscore listener 21 equal to. So SID list is nothing but list of your system identifier details we will be providing. So let's start with here equal to followed by SID list. This is one SID list. Inside the SID list I have to mention here SID description. So in my case, which is my SID description, I'll say here global DB name. This we call global DB name, and here my service name is CDB1 PDB1, followed by I have to mention here Oracle home. Let's put it my Oracle home. This is my Oracle home path. Let's put it here. Followed by I can just put one more option, SID name. That's it. Now I will just add my SID, in my case instance name CDB1. Save it and bracket close for SID description, bracket close for your SID list. That's it. Now save it and now try to go for. Can I go ahead and verify now listener 21 is ready? Can I able to connect now? No, remove this comment just for a reference I added. What it says that this is a CDB1 is not ready to just go for a kind of a reload options. Here you go. The moment you do a reload and just try to reconnect, here you go. That's it. So what it says here, the things has been registered. Yes, what has been registered? You can see here the CDB1 is not there, so I did a reload options. The moment I go for reload, automatically here there was a CDB1 not present. I just add it. Now after adding this information, whenever you, let me exit from here, whenever you add the entry in this particular file, these values, whenever you add it, you have to go for ask to my listener reread this file. To tell that listener please reread this below entry, then that is we call reload. Reload does not impact on address. Reload only impact on rereading this section, SID description section. Once you reload it, then it will take those changes whatever you have added and now save it, ready to go for taking the incoming connection. That's it for today's agenda. What has been said, how you should configure dynamic as well as static listener registration for a standalone instance. We call standalone database instance. Standalone other word, it is called non-track. So these are the steps you have to remember. Dynamic listener registration, nothing but your listener should listen on the port number 1521. Then only on behalf of instance, the background process name called LREG will update about its instance details along with its global DB name and services details to my listener. So that updating automatically only when happens when the listener is listening on 1521, and that is we called dynamic registration. If your listener is not using 1521 port number, then I need to configure a static registration by using one of the method. That's it. Thank you for watching. Take care and bye bye.